Here on the ground, change happens fast. Problems feel frequent and urgent. It's loud and anxiety runs high. From a satellite view, the Earth looks the same as it did thousands of years ago. We've been here before. Let's learn from our past and shoot for a better future.
Hello and welcome to this episode of A Satellite View. I'm Todd Mikkelson, your host, speaking at you from Sunday, June 1st, 2025, in the space and time continuum. Another week like the others. Trying to keep the chaos going is what the administration's doing. They're still letting Donald Trump go out and make a fool of himself and everybody who's in the room with him at any given moment. Pete Hegseth has said that he thinks China will attack Taiwan. He thinks that's imminent. I have seen some people say that I assume he did it in a tweet of some sort, and he said eminent, E-M-I-N-E-N-T, which means like your eminence. That means like the king, your holy eminence, the Pope. And that's totally believable is the sad thing. I don't know that that's true. I didn't want to spend too much time checking into whether or not he used the wrong word. Imminent, I-M-M-E, blah, 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 of course means it's coming soon. It's about to happen. That's what he meant, but he might have used the wrong word. And the sad thing is that all of America really believes that that is probably true of our defense secretary, because everybody in this administration are unqualified, to say the least. And a lot of maddening things about these people. They're killers. They're killing people. They are responsible for the deaths of people in other countries already by cutting U.S. aid and things like that. They want to cut Medicaid. And when Joni Ernst had a town hall, I'm sure you've heard this, just a couple days ago, somebody said, people will die. And she said, we're all gonna die. And then she made it worse, either this morning or last night, by saying, I'll tell you about that in a little bit. I'm going to read a little bit from Scott Dworkin again, because, again, these things are bad for Trump and bad for the administration and so many things. Some GOP want to cut Medicaid even more than this bill cuts it. Some don't want to cut it at all. Now, that's a good thing because the GOP is having a huge civil war. They know cutting Medicaid will decimate them. And some of them are trying to state that and trying to convince their colleagues that, hey, we should not cut Medicaid. Josh Hawley, of all people, one of the most vile, horrible people, and one of the most, I won't use the word conservative, far right-wing extremist. He's saying, hey, a lot of my constituents are going to get hurt if we cut Medicaid. We can't cut Medicaid. And then other senators are saying, no, we need to cut Medicaid even more because we need to pay for these tax cuts for the filthy rich billionaires who shouldn't even exist in a civil world. But that's the only people that those people are seem to want to get elected for. People like them and Joni Ernst, as far as I'm concerned, they think the government should only help oligarchs and has no responsibility to help people who need help. Get the fuck out of the way and let somebody else in there who's going to serve the people of the United States. That was the original intention of this democracy, of this democratic republic. It was written, of course, by a bunch of misogynistic old white rich men but a lot of them were really good people. and in the times that they were in, that's what they did. And I'm sure, like you've heard me say 100 times, if they were here right now, they would say, you guys haven't changed the Constitution at all? Wow. I mean, we meant for you to change it and update it. I mean, Jesus Christ. We wanted to do it better than we did it. We had to make changes to please the bad people. You still have slavery? Okay, you say you got rid of slavery? Oh, what? Not until 1860s? What? Anyway, I'm getting way off track here. I do have a list of things, but I do want to mostly talk about that this is a dull headache. These things cannot go on. ICE has ramped up and changed their tactics in a horribly vile way. Stephen Miller, the ghoul, Nosferatu, non-human, wants to bring up the amount of arrests. They've been having about 600 a week. They want 3,000 or 2,000 or 2 or 3,000. I think 3,000 a week. 5 times more than what they've been doing. So he had the bright idea, I'm assuming it was him, to send ICE to the courts. Because every day there are people who are trying, they have fled their countries because something horrible is going on and they're afraid their family's going to die. They're fleeing gangsters, they're fleeing gangs, they're fleeing war, they're fleeing all these horrible things from other countries, coming for asylum in the United States, hoping to become citizens, and they're doing what they're supposed to do. They're showing up for their court date. And then they go in and the Homeland Security there, and they say, we're going to dismiss this case. And the people don't know what's going on, so they're like, oh, that sounds good. Like, I don't have to do this, because they're scared. It's scary to go to court. They're scared, so they feel like, okay, good, dismiss the case. And then ICE arrests them because they have not gone through the proper measures. Because it was just canceled by... Okay, you get the idea. It's a setup. It's an ambush. And then these ICE guys, they have masks on. They're afraid to show their faces. They're cowards. They're heavily armed, and they're in huge numbers. Civilians are trying to fight against them. So that's going on in the courts. They show up at court where these people are trying to do what they're supposed to do. And then they take the husband away, or they take the wife away. The whole family's there. The children are seeing this happen. Splitting up families because they're non-human ghouls. This is Nazi Germany kind of stuff. They are the Gestapo. It's maddening and it's heartbreaking all at the same time, and it cannot keep going on. In San Diego, they used these flash bombs against civilians, not even the people that they're arresting, but civilians who are just going up there saying, hey, what are you doing? They showed up at popular restaurants in San Diego and took all of the employees away. They kidnapped them. And they're putting them in these trucks where I have claustrophobia. There's no way you could get me to stay in that truck for 2 minutes. They're putting them in these trucks where there's no room for them to barely even sit down on a bench. It's like their knees are hitting the wall in front of them. It's maddening and it's heartbreaking, and it cannot go on. I'm pissed. You're pissed. I'm impatient. You're impatient. It seems like, I don't know, some force has determined that it needs to get this bad before we can completely tear this down and rebuild. Because that is what needs to happen. No, not an impeachment of Trump so that fucking J.D. Vance becomes president. No. J.D. Vance is guilty of all this crap too. Go to electiontruthalliance.org and see the information. The proof is there. They're gathering more proof, but there's been a lot of proof available for a while. And I want to know why nobody's doing anything about it. Now, of course, we only have 29 more days until the big reveal that Anonymous announced. And I talked about that last week in detail. 29 more days. I think there's a chance that they're going to decide, no, this can't go on any longer. And I think it's going to be less than 29 days in the end. But there are other countries who have already and are gathering information. Mark Rutte and NATO had a meeting in, where was it? I want to say something like in Ohio. A weird place. And what went on there? You didn't hear about that meeting, but it happened. NATO. Apparently meeting with some congressional people. What's going on behind the scenes? We need to find out pretty damn soon because this crap cannot go on any longer. It's maddening and it's heartbreaking. And it cannot go on any longer. When they say the term deep state, you've heard the right wing use of the term deep state. They're projecting. They are the deep state. These oligarchs. Now, apparently, Peter Thiel is taking over a lot of the Doge, taking the information that Elon Musk gathered. And all Elon Musk did was murder young children in other countries by cutting off U.S. aid. He murdered children. And then he stopped something like 30 or 60. I've heard different numbers, but a lot of investigations against his companies because they take government contracts, billions of dollars in government contracts. He's the richest guy in the world. Pay for your own exploding rockets. Why do I got to pay for your exploding failure? SpaceX needs to fold. What are they doing? Other than causing a hazard by exploding rockets and having the debris fall down to the ground every few weeks. It happened again this week. It was a partial success. It was a partial success. No, it was not a partial success. It was a complete failure. The rocket exploded. No, shut up. And what's going on with him, by the way? He had a black eye the other day, and he lied about why it happened. Who knows? Apparently, he's stealing Stephen Miller's wife. It's an embarrassing joke, but it is going on in our White House. It's infuriating. I am pissed, as I'm sure you are, and I am growing impatient. This needs to change, and I believe it is going to change. All right, so this was kind of a rant. I didn't follow my notes very well. I'm pissed, and I'm sick of it. And it's a dull headache that I'm sick of putting up with. The hope that everything's going to change, the hope that I purvey on this show, it's still there, but this week has just been a little much. It's a little too fucking long at this point. Let's take a break, and when we come back, I'm going to tell you about some things that happened this week and some things that I believe are coming up that are going to happen that are good. Very bad for Donald Trump and Elon Musk and Peter Thiel and Stephen Miller and J.D. Vance and Mike Johnson, and go down the list. Very bad for them. Pam Bondi, Joni Ernst, Kristi Noem, Pete Hegseth. Very bad for them, but good for you and me and the world. We're going to remember who's in this with us. It's easy to get frustrated and feel all by yourself. That's how I've been feeling this week. Heidi's kind of done with it. She almost doesn't even want me to talk to her about it anymore. At least this week. Of course, we end up talking about it every night, but, it's hard sometimes to cope with this crap, and we need to be careful about that. So, again, let's take a break and let's come back and talk about helping each other out. Let's come back and talk about some things that I see as being extremely interesting and extremely positive that I noticed this week. And then some news that I'm sure you haven't heard about because the regular news media is not talking about it. So let's talk about those things when we come back from a short break on a satellite view. We're back on a satellite view. If you like the music you're hearing here, go to toddmikkelson.com and push the music button. Find me on Instagram at Todd Mikkelson. Follow me. And you can also find our YouTube page. If you go to YouTube and put in a satellite view podcast, you'll find our YouTube page. And we also have a website that is satelliteviewpodcast.com. And sign up to get our emailer. We're here talking now about some good things that I've noticed. The split in the Republican Party is good. It's preventing this horrible bill from getting passed. This bill does have things in it. It's kind of a catch-22. If they pass the bill, they will definitely lose all elections for the foreseeable future. But in the bill is them giving themselves the power to not hold elections. So this is the scary stuff that we're in. Everything's coming to a head. They've taken it way too far. By the way, they did not win this election. We're only 29 days now away from the big reveal that Anonymous has announced. I talked about that extensively in last week. They're going to reveal things that will be overwhelmingly, unbelievably horrible about the regime, the Nazi regime that is currently running the United States. That's what Anonymous is saying. And Anonymous doesn't F around. So far, when they say, hey, we're going to do something in a week, they do it, and it's big. They have said it's right around July 1st. I believe they're going to end up moving the date sooner than that, because of a lot of the things that I talked about in the last segment. So the split in the Republican Party, preventing this bill from getting passed, is a good thing. The fact that Wall Street is using the word taco as an acronym, TACO, that stands for Trump always chickens out, that's hurting him the most out of anything that could possibly hurt him. By the way, Pete Hegseth did illegal wiretaps to try and find leakers. So he fired a couple people after he illegally wiretapped their phones. What's going to happen with that, Pete? Here's a good thing that happened this week. Jake Tapper. I talked extensively last week about how I'm more pissed at Jake Tapper than I am at Donald Trump or Elon Musk or any of these ghouls. Jake Tapper is the new ghoul. There's a new ghoul in town. Jake Tapper's show viewership on CNN, a huge force, right? Supposedly, his viewership went down 25% this week since he released his book trying to report about Joe Biden not being healthy enough mentally or physically to be the president, which, of course, America totally rejects, as America has rejected his book. Apparently, his book is tanking, and his book is tanking his show. He had like 500,000 views That's less than a lot of online entities that don't have the power of television or the history of being on cable TV for the last 40 years. He has the lowest ratings since 2015. Lowest ratings in 10 years for Jake Tapper. Yep. I hope it ends his career. Here's another thing that happened that you may not have heard about, although it did happen on CNN. Stephen Miller was asked about why he's saying that all the judges are wrong and illegal. You know, habeas corpus, blah, blah, blah. Stephen Miller, ghoul, Nosferatu, BS. But he said, the Federalist Society has broken the system for judicial vetting. All right? The Federalist Society is our enemy. The Federalist Society is what got all the mess to happen in SCOTUS. Leonard Leo, who, by the way, a month, 6 weeks ago, wrote a letter to Trump against the tariffs. Leonard Leo is slowly turning on Trump. Well, now apparently Trump's turning on Leonard Leo. Stephen Miller's saying that the Federalist Society is his enemy because of how they appoint judges. No, they're my enemy, Steve. What are you talking about? You can't have them as your enemy. They're my... No, this is good. It's splitting. They're splintering. They've all gone too far. A lot of coverage about the ICE ghouls. Goons. Ghouls. They've also been raiding construction sites and farms and just kidnapping people. They've got masks on. So, you know, I talked about it in the last segment, but the thing I'm pointing out here is it's gotten some pretty good coverage this week. Still probably not. I mean, local news, NBC, ABC, CBS, local news has been covering the horribleness of ICE, by the way. ICE was not supposed to be a permanent thing. It was supposed to be temporary after 9/11, 25 years ago. And it is still here. Yeah, AOC ran on Abolish ICE back in 2018. I watched the documentary about her and others' campaigns from back then. Really good documentary. And it just reminds you. Another candidate had her daughter die because she had a 22-year-old daughter had an embolism. Went to the emergency room and they said, well, you don't have health insurance, so we can't treat you. And like a week later, she died because she didn't have health care. That was in 2018. John Kennedy said we're 90 years behind on getting health care coverage for people in this country because other countries were taking care of their citizens 90 years before that, which that was 60 years ago. All right? John F. Kennedy was complaining about the United States health care coverage. He wanted to fix it. Another part of the dull headache. Now, some really great reporting on this ICE story and other stories was done by the Majority Report. Emma Vigeland and Sam Cedar. The show is called The Majority Report. Find it on YouTube. They have a great show. They do great coverage. Emma Vigeland is a very level-headed, extremely progressive person. But sometimes when the other extremely progressive people start to complain about Kamala Harris, say, talking to Liz Cheney. Even Sam Cedar was saying back during the campaign, why is she talking to Liz Cheney? Man, that's not a good idea. I'm not for that. And Emma Vigeland said, that's not for us, Sam. We all hate Liz Cheney. Yeah, she wants women to die from not having access to women's health care coverage. Liz Cheney wants women to die just like all the other Republicans want women to die. I don't like seeing Kamala Harris talking with Liz Cheney and partnering up with her, but that's not for us. Kamala's got all of our bases covered. And now she's trying to gain more voters. Liz Cheney is acting against this regime. And Kamala Harris is recognizing that. Emma Vigeland pointed that out to her boss on her show, on his and her show. And another incredible thing that happened this week is that Emma Vigeland was a guest on the Katie Tur show on MSNBC. Katie Tur, who has been mostly pissing me off for a couple years now, has her own show in the middle of the day on MSNBC. And usually when I hear her show, I'm like, who's this chucklehead you're having on? Why are you saying that? Why did you just say that? It makes me think that the corporate media is starting to see, we're going to lose money if we don't start to change. Look at what's happening to Fox News. Look what's happening to Jake Tapper. Look what happened to, Tucker Carlson and all that. We need to think about the future. I think we need to, tell the truth again like we used to. and I think maybe Katie Tur was like, well, if you're saying that you want to go in that direction, I would like to have this woman, Emma Vigeland, on my show. Maybe Katie Tur is a fan of the Majority Report too. And Katie Tur's just like, I wish I could be like these people, but instead I'm getting paid by this corporate BS machine, and I'm not allowed to tell the truth anymore. Maybe Katie Tur wants to tell the truth. She had Emma Vigeland on, and I heard part of the segment, and Emma went at it. She did not hold back, and Katie Tur did not fight against it. Katie Tur let Emma Vigeland go all the way. I won't go into details just because it will take too long, but I was surprised. I was very surprised and extremely pleasantly surprised. And I see a change coming in some corporate media. And that's really good. Here's something that happened last night you may or may not have heard of. Ukraine invaded, took out 41 of the most prized and irreplaceable long-range fighter planes from Russia. Deep inside Russia, they did a drone hit that was 100% successful. They did not target civilians. They targeted these long-range fighter planes. 30% of the fighting force of the Russians taken out in one attack. Where was Trump? Well, he was left out of the loop. Zelensky did not include the United States in this intelligence loop. Our intelligence agencies were caught completely off guard. They were not told about this by anybody. You know that he told European leaders, and European leaders are all turning against Trump. They're ramping up their defense. And if you remember a couple weeks ago, they said if Putin does not show up at this meeting in Turkey, we're going to make sure that Ukraine receives the utilities they need to win this war. And then about 2 weeks later, Ukraine pulls off a 100% successful, huge attack, hitting at the heart of the Russian forces deep inside the country. Everyone is completely surprised and flummoxed by this. Oh, except Donald Trump himself. He's golfing. Yeah. So I'm going to read a little bit from Scott Dworkin. I told you about Scott Dworkin, Dworkin. Go look him up and get on his email list because he'll send you these emails every day, and he covers a lot. I'm going to read a little bit from his newest. The next big round of protests is set for June 14th, Trump's birthday, with more than 1,400 events scheduled nationwide. As you may have heard, Trump plans to celebrate his birthday by throwing an authoritarian military parade in D.C., which could cost upwards of $45 million. It's shaping up to be the largest day of protests this year, by far. This weekend, demonstrations continued even before the 14th. This weekend, they continued at least a dozen cities against Evelo Airlines calling out their contract with ICE to facilitate the deportations. So people are protesting this airline because the airline has a contract to fly the kidnapped people out of the country. Meanwhile, Democrats are hosting large town halls. Yesterday, Democratic Representative Yasmin Ansari co-hosted a Tell Me How You Really Feel town hall in GOP Representative David Schweckert's district in Phoenix, Arizona. Ansari has been relentlessly calling out Schweckert, especially after missing the Trump ugly budget vote because he slept through it. He literally said he was sleeping during the vote, so he couldn't vote on it. Good job. And if that was true, why did you report it? Then, of course, we have Joni Ernst. She managed to make things even worse following her terrible town hall response to Medicaid cuts, saying, well, we are all going to die. So following the public outrage over the gross comment, Ernst released a sarcastic apology video filmed in a cemetery. In the video, Ernst snidely belittles her constituents, saying she thought folks already knew we are all going to perish from the earth. She continued by saying she was glad she didn't, quote, have to bring up the subject of the tooth fairy as well, unquote. Because, of course, the Republicans are so funny, right? They're so funny. Just condescending, not condensate, not condensation. I don't want to be Pete Hegseth. Not condensation. Condescending to her own constituents. And we will not call her the names that are popping into our heads. Also, on June 14th, Pope Leo is having a mass in Illinois. On June 14th, Pope Leo is going up against Trump. Mano o mano. How does that saying go? I think Trump is going to be very disappointed, no matter what happens on the 14th. He's imagining in his head basically being Kim Jong-un, standing there having everybody salute him. Thousands of soldiers, hundreds of tanks, million planes flying overhead in formation just for him on his birthday. That's what he's imagining in his head. None of that's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen, but that's not going to happen. So yeah. Just going through my notes, I think I covered everything, actually, unbelievably, because I usually fail. 29 days until the big reveal that Anonymous announced. The clock is ticking. And I think, like I said, I think they're going to move it up a few days because they're going to see, okay, yeah, no, we're going to pull the plug on this right now. NATO had meetings, apparently, with some congressional people. And a lot of Democratic congressional elected officials, again, this week, performing extremely well, both on television appearances and in committee hearings. You can find those committee hearings on YouTube. They're very interesting. Sounds boring. It's very interesting. Go to electiontruthalliance.org. Get ready for the big reveal in 29 days, because that's going to be a big part of it. The world, it's going to be worldwide. This isn't a United States thing. This is a worldwide revelation that's going to happen. A lot of people's minds are going to be blown. Maybe not yours and mine as much, because we've been talking about this. The fact that there's a lot of evidence and proof that Elon Musk used Starlink to change the vote counts on Election Day. And the whole world knows about it because he's done it in other countries as well. A reminder, the rest of the world is with us on this, and Trump has united the rest of the world so that all of the other countries who had all these elections, many countries had these elections over the last few months since November 5th, I should say. They have blotted out the Russian-backed Trumpers that were running in those races. All of these countries have chosen the good guy. The rest of the world has already fixed themselves quite a bit. We're a little behind, and it is getting excruciating to wait for us to correct this. I know that. That's what I talked about in the beginning of this show. It's difficult. My patience is waning. Yours is too. It's a horrible, dull headache at this point, and we need relief. But the rest of the world is on our side. They know that, well, actually, they know more than we do, that Donald Trump was not elected by American voters. And that the grand majority, vast majority, I should say, of Americans are against Donald Trump. The rest of the world knows that. They're here with us. I'm with you. Thank you for being with me on this show. Let's keep together, because we're all in this together. And when we fight, we win. Protests on June 14th are going to be even bigger than the protests of the past, which have been record-breaking themselves. I think it's going to be a pretty amazing day to witness. Things remain interesting, but take care of yourself. Live your life. Don't wait for these things. You've got to live your life and have fun. The weather's getting better up here in the Northern Hemisphere. Let's enjoy it. Let's get out in nature. Let's play our guitars and our pianos and whatever else you might play. Trombone. Play it. Get it out and play it. I'm sorry for not going down the list of instruments. If you play a different instrument, I apologize for not covering your particular musical instrument. But whatever it is, play it. Hang out with the people that you like and want to hang out with. Hang out with the people you love. Cherish your life while we're waiting for all of this. We live in an incredible time, and we can feel victim to it, or we can feel like we've got control over it and we have our own choices to make. The people protesting are taking power. And there are other things like give money to a local candidate. Vote. Voting. Just vote. All right, gone way too long and way off the rails again, way into the weeds again. Thank you so much for sticking with me for way too long again this week. And I will speak at you next week, and we're going to help each other through this. We're all in this together. So again, thank you for listening. I'll speak at you next week.
You've been listening to A Satellite View with Todd Mikkelson. Go to toddmikkelson.com for links and more information.